In the summer of 1916, Europe was drowning in war. 2 long years of fighting had consumed millions of lives. The trenches stretched from the North Sea to Switzerland, a deep scar carved into the heart of the continent. This is the story of the Battle of the Somme, a campaign that became a symbol of courage, tragedy, and the futility of modern war. A battle that lasted 141 days and left more than 1 million men dead or wounded. By 1916, the Great War had reached a deadlock. Neither side could break through the endless lines of trenches and barbed wire. France was bleeding at Verdun. Germany held strong defensive positions. Britain, still building its army, prepared for a massive assault designed to shatter the stalemate. Together with France, the British planned an offensive along the River Somme. The goal, to crush the German defences and relieve pressure on Verdun. The soldiers called it the Big Push. No one could have imagined the nightmare about to unfold. On June 24, 1916, the Allied guns opened fire. For 7 days and nights, 1.5 million shells rained down on the German lines. The noise was deafening. The ground shook like thunder. Men miles away could feel the earth trembling beneath their feet. Commanders believed that nothing could survive. They told their men that once the shelling stopped, they would simply walk forward and occupy the ruins. Confidence ran high in the British camps. Letters home spoke of victory, of a push that would finally end the war. But the Germans were not destroyed. Their bunkers were deep, reinforced with concrete, buried far below the surface. When the shelling began, they simply waited underground, protected from the storm. They listened as the earth above them shattered, and then waited for the noise to fade. Many British shells failed to explode. Much of the barbed wire remained untouched. The Allied artillery had done far less damage than expected. The Germans were ready. At 7:30 a.m., on July 1st, 1916, the whistles blew. Tens of thousands of men climbed from their trenches and advanced across no man's land. They walked in straight lines, shoulder to shoulder, burdened with heavy packs and hope. Most were young. Many were volunteers, men who had never fought before. Then, the German machine guns opened fire. Within minutes, the battlefield turned into chaos. Men were cut down before they even left their own lines. Entire battalions vanished in the first hour. The smoke thickened. The screams of the wounded echoed through the fields. The soldiers pressed forward, driven by duty, confusion, and disbelief. Some reached the first German wire, only to find it unbroken. Others fell into craters filled with mud and blood. The courage was real, but the plan had failed. By nightfall, the scale of the disaster was staggering. Nearly 60,000 British casualties, almost 20,000 dead. It was the bloodiest day in the history of the British Army. Across the lines, German soldiers looked out in silence. Even they were horrified. One wrote in his diary, "We could see them coming, line after line, and we shot them down. It was murder." Despite the horror, the attack did not stop. Commanders demanded new assaults. Fresh waves of soldiers were sent forward into the storm. Each advance met the same fate: machine gun fire, artillery, and death. The battlefield became a vision of hell: mud, smoke, shattered bodies, and endless shellfire. The living shared the trenches with the dead. The smell of decay and cordite filled the air. Rats fed freely among the fallen. Letters home spoke of courage and despair. "It is not war," one soldier wrote. "It is the end of the world." Day after day, week after week, the fighting continued. Every inch of ground was bought with blood. The Somme became a graveyard. Villages that once stood proud were reduced to ashes. Trees vanished. The very landscape seemed to die. By the end of July, both armies were exhausted. The Allied lines had advanced only a few kilometers. Still, orders came to continue. The generals believed victory was close, but the soldiers knew the truth. The Somme was not a breakthrough. It was a slaughter. And yet, they kept fighting. For their comrades, for their country, for hope. July bled into August, but the guns never stopped. The Battle of the Somme had become a struggle not for victory, but for survival. By late summer, the British Army began to adapt. The lessons of July were written in blood. Artillery became more precise. Infantry tactics improved. Small groups replaced long lines. They learned to move with cover, to crawl, to survive. And for the first time in history, a new weapon appeared on the battlefield: the tank. In September 1916, near the village of Flers-Courcelette, the British unleashed their secret weapon. The tanks were slow and unreliable, but terrifying. They crushed wire, crossed trenches, and rolled through enemy fire. The Germans fled at the sight of them, thinking they were monsters. Though their success was limited, the tank marked the beginning of mechanized war. The future of battle had arrived. For the soldiers, life on the Somme remained a nightmare. They lived in trenches filled with water and rot. The mud clung to everything. Rats grew fat from feeding on the dead. Sleep was rare. Fear was constant. Most were volunteers, PALS battalions, men from the same towns, schools, and factories. They had enlisted together, trained together, and now they fell together. Entire communities back home were torn apart. One telegram could shatter a family. One battle could erase a generation. Across the lines, the Germans suffered just as terribly. Their trenches crumbled under endless bombardment. They endured hunger, exhaustion, and despair. A German soldier later wrote, "The Somme was hell." The earth shook. The air burned. The dead were everywhere. By October, the weather turned against both armies. The rain began. Cold, endless rain. The battlefield turned to liquid mud. Guns jammed. Horses drowned. Men sank into the ground and vanished. Still, the fighting went on. The British attacked again and again, gaining a few hundred meters at a time. Each success costs thousands of lives. The French too fought with determination, pushing from the south. But progress was slow. The Germans held every hill, every ridge, until there was nothing left to defend. By November, both sides were near collapse. On November 18th, 1916, after 141 days of unbroken combat, the offensive was finally called off. The Allies had advanced barely 10 kilometers. Over 1 million men were killed, wounded, or missing. The Somme was over, but its scars would never heal. The battle had no victor. It was not a triumph of strategy, but a tragedy of humanity. Yet, it changed everything. It weakened the German army and transformed the British into a force hardened by fire. It proved that industrial war would consume all who fought it. And it showed the world that courage alone could not defeat machines. In Britain, the Somme became a symbol, not of glory, but of sacrifice. A reminder that the cost of war is written in blood. Generations would look back and see the faces of those who never returned. Young men who went forward with hope and vanished in the smoke of history. Today, the fields of the Somme are silent and green again. The grass has grown back, But beneath the soil lie the remains of thousands who never came home. Across the hills, white headstones stand in endless rows, each one a story unfinished. Each one a name remembered. Every year, on July 1st, people gather to remember the fallen. They stand in silence. They whisper the same words, lest we forget. The Battle of the Somme remains one of history's darkest chapters. It showed the courage of ordinary men and the failure of those who led them. It was meant to end the war. Instead, it defined it. 1 million men, 141 days, one eternal truth. In war, there are no winners, only survivors. Lest we forget.